All right, welcome back to Just Some BS podcast. Today we have Tim Medina. Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So your LinkedIn says growing businesses into thriving brands through design, photo, video, and social media. Christian, husband, dad, creative director, and founder of Stump and Root Company. Does that cover
It's a
everything?
mouthful. Yeah, it's a little, some of it. I believe it or not, I actually cut that down from what it was before. So
Okay. Yeah. So one, I love the sticker on the microphone idea. I think that's brilliant. That's why I was actually readjusting my thing because I was like, that's a really good idea. I might do that. So, tell me a little bit about Stump and Root, kind of where all that came from.
Yeah, so Stump and Root is a brainchild of mine that had existed pretty much back in 2016, 2017. I was struggling in school and with the job I had at the time, and I had like dreamed of this day that I could start my own studio. Like, it was a pipe dream to me because I didn't think I could ever actually do it. Maybe it's just the lack of confidence I had growing up, and maybe a lot of other creatives can identify with that. But I didn't think I can do it myself, but I had this name picked out, from the book of Isaiah in the Bible. It talks about this Messiah, and it's this prophecy about he shall be the stump of Jesse, the root of David. And I really like that symbolism. And so I kind of took those two ideas, stump and root, and put them together.
Man, that's a lot of meaning behind that. One, I love the one thing I love about the brand and the name itself. I think it's so simplistic, but it feels good to look at. I don't know how to explain it, but your logo is very simplistic and easy to look at, enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Because the one thing, one thing about my logo is, but when we started officially, actually, we're coming up on a year this Friday of Stump and Root. But when I first started, we hadn't finished the logo or anything, and we had like no time to like really finish it off. And I had like some workings of a logo. I'm like, all right, this will do for now. I there's this thing that people do in business, and I mean everywhere else, other parts of life as well, where they kind of make excuses for why they can't do the next step. So they'll have all these barriers that they'll put up, like, oh, I need to have my website perfect, or I need to have my logo perfect, I need to have the colors and this and that. And a lot of times that just acts as a barrier to insulate us from doing the thing that is the most difficult and the thing that scares us the most. And so I'm like, all right, I'm not going to let that stuff bother me or stop me, because I need to put food on the table for my family. And so that's what I did. I used what we had, but then I knew I wanted to come back to it at some point. And something about my designing is I'm an illustrator as well, and I always liked illustrative logos. But the original Summer Root logo was just text. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but my personal taste, I'm like, I just wish I had like a little icon that it was just my logo. And and so later in the year, we didn't really slow down that much. Truthfully, it was just busy throughout the entire year, but we just put the time and effort into doing the full rebrand for ourselves. And it was, I would say, it's a slight pivot. If you saw the old one, you could see like, oh, okay, I see what you changed, but I added this icon, and I really love it because I think it kind of has the rings are the tree ring, of course, and the leaf and the stem is obviously the root. So
Yeah, it's brilliant. One, congratulations on 1 year coming up. It's amazing.
yeah, thank you.
Did you ever think did you ever not believe you'd get to this point in the 1 year?
Not when we started. Because when we started, I'm like, all right, there's no turning back. I have to just keep going. Like, I have a wife, I have a daughter. I'm like, this has to work. And just from our previous experiences with working for other people, like, there's nothing wrong, obviously, with working for anyone else. But for me, I'm like, it just doesn't make sense for me to do that. And with all the negative experiences we had, I'm like, there's no option for me. And I think when you have that kind of mindset, when there's only forward, then you work to get it done. So
I think it's one, I love that you commented on kind of all the peripheral things that people do before doing the thing, because that comes up a lot. I feel like as I've been down this YouTube journey for quite a long time, a lot of those coaches talk about like just hit record, right? All
Yep.
this other crap is the easy work, but it makes you feel better, like you're still moving, but you got to
Yep.
make the first video.
Definitely. Yeah. We put these arbitrary, barriers in front of us that ultimately it's not going to be moving the needle. And that's what I think is so important about just getting started with whatever it is. A lot of those stuff, they come later, and I think we fool ourselves into feeling productive by working on all the little busyness parts of it.
Yeah, it's so good.
And so just don't do that, just just get into the meat of it.
Yeah, that's really good. Can you share the story of how you transitioned from creating visual content to helping businesses develop their personal brands through design and media, specifically that transition point?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I was always an artist growing up, visual fine artist, and really struggled with knowing what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't have any idea. I'd been an artist, I'd been a photographer, and I dabbled in video, and I'd always dreamed about being a filmmaker, but I didn't have any practical way of jumping into that. But at some point in college, I got my first big boy job. Before I worked at Chick-fil-A and Staples, but I got this job where I was doing motion graphics for this video production company, like a really small production company at Rock Lidditz. And that was my first real step into that. And so I was able to, you do little 2D animations for this like phonics app, like for iPad. And so that was really my first, step into that. And eventually, I did freelance work for other companies, which, more or less is that. But I'd never done the actual B2B where I'm talking with the business owner myself and trying to figure out what really works best for them until eventually I started working at a swing set company in 2021. So 4 years ago now. And that's when I really had to delve into true marketing. I'd done marketing before that, but marketing in the way of solving problems and showing people that the company's product is a solution to their problems. And I had to do that in every facet, through design, through social media, through the photography and video for the products. And so I really had to like flex all of those skills to sell a product and again show the customers that that's their solution, to their problem.
How hard is going from, or maybe even combining the two, of just being creative to create something versus being creative, like you said, to solve a business problem that is real, but still keeping the core of like that creative spirit?
Yeah, I think it probably depends artist to artist or creative to creative. I think there are some artists who resent the idea of creating art for anyone else except for themselves. Um, and I would say art is different than creative.
Oh, good point.
Like I guess it depends how you really define, because all of this stuff can be defined differently. Art is just is human expression in whichever way you want to use it. So you have fine art, which is usually paintings or drawings or more traditional styles, contemporary or traditional styles of art. And then you have more digital media, which is, there's still a lot of fine art in there. But then you get into things like photography, which even that was almost an affront to art when it really came out over 100 years ago, because it's like, all right, this is not real art. But now we've seen what real fine art photography could look like.
Yeah.
And then video, same thing, where every artist, I think, if they're a true artist, they do want to make art for art's sake, for self-expression. I found myself doing that even through LinkedIn. Like I do occasional posts that are more the fine arts of creative writing.
Yeah.
Like I'll generate an image and then I'll do this whole little write up, and I've been finding fun doing that. But finding the balance is tricky because some people, they want to keep it separate. I'm not sure if you watch Severance at all.
Oh, yeah.
On so they want to have their artist innie and outie.
I love that.
Where they want to have it so separate from themselves. Like I've had to have conversations with like photographers where they're like, don't do what you love for a living because you'll end up hating it.
Mm.
And I don't agree with that. I think that can happen. I think that's definitely a temptation. But even for Stump and Root, I'm like, well, I have to find a way for me not to make this all about like painting by numbers, And I think that's how sometimes people they they think about creative work, marketing, and this kind of work as like painting by numbers. And I think once you do that, you remove the soul, And I think the way to really see this as valuable is to see like there is purpose behind it, because there is like design work or whatever that is just, hey, we need you to film this really quickly, no artistry involved, and we just need you to do a simple project, press the button, and then it outputs the and that's horrible. And no, there are people that don't mind doing that, but it
Yeah.
sucks. But then you have I saw some this video about this filmmaker. I mean, he's a true filmmaker doing this for the Mets through their. He does like these incredible artistic shots live. So he's live filmmaking. It's incredible. Like having overlays of the players.
Jeez.
Like it's nuts. And just it was so incredible seeing that. And I'm like, he is someone who could just do he could just be like, all right, I'm just going to paint by the numbers. I'll just record the live session of baseball. And Mets are not the best players. I'm from New York, so my dad is actually a huge Mets fan. But he chose to make it something that's so near and dear to him.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to intention. To answer your question, like the way to keep it is to find a way to find meaning in the work you're doing, and then also have your own outlets, so that you're not being so bottled up with doing corporate work or whatever. I could talk about that whole topic for like hours, just because there's so much intricacy and nuance, depending on what angle you want to go at it. But
oh man, yeah, that's deep. And so referencing the Mets concept is it's really just blurring the lines, right?
yep,
It's being creative enough with the creative art to blur the lines between what you would love to do and what you're tasked to do.
yep, exactly.
The moment you started talking about that, I instantly started thinking about I really try to get people on board with, especially when you're talking around culture or people. I feel like we feel we can only go the rules way or the way it's always been done. And I think
Yeah,
it's so like, I don't like social events. I don't like going to mixers. I don't like going to those things, but I know it's important, especially in the role, not only for myself, but for the organization. So my solution is this creative outlet that allows me to still put content out, still be relevant, still be on social
yep,
media all the time, but it checks my boxes for not having to go do that. Right. So
yep.
it's finding creative solutions to things that you're supposed to do and just not saying no because you want to be stuck in the mud, right? And I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Exactly.
I think it's the same concept, right? You got to find that voice or that creative spirit of yourself inside of that specific problem and be innovative to do that.
Yeah, and I think like we're not stuck doing anything. It's
Ooh.
not like I think a lot of people they almost say like, "Well, this is my lot in life, and I'm stuck here." It's like you are, obviously there are slaves in the world, but like in our American society, you're not a slave in your job. You have the freedom to quit.
Hmm.
Like you're not stuck in the field or the specific niche of what you're doing. I know, and I think that's kind of the lie and safety that you find yourself within certain jobs and niches where you're like, well, this is what I have to do. And this is something I've been talking to with my business partner Sarah in Stub and Root. I'm like, look, if we don't like doing a certain thing, we don't have to keep doing it. We can just stop offering it. And if we don't want to work with a certain industry, we don't have to. We can just pivot. And I think so many people, it's like kind of what I was saying before, like they put these barriers up. It's like, well, they put themselves in these boxes where it's like, I have to keep going down this path. It's like, but you don't. You can actually choose to say, you know what? if I really don't find any enjoyment in this, if I don't find life in this thing I'm doing, why must I keep continuing going down this path?
Mm.
And I think there's a fine balance between being someone who just has no steadfastness, where they just quit because it's too difficult or annoying. Because sometimes actually persevering, you'll get to the end of it and you actually find you love it.
Yeah.
So I do think there's some wisdom in how you approach it, but I think we have to really realize that you're not stuck in anything. There is always a way out. And I think that mindset will help you in life in every facet. Is you're not stuck where you are.
Have you always been super clear with your own values of what you want?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I've always been, I was born and raised a Christian. My parents were, and not just that. My parents are so black and white with so many things, and so I was raised with this strong sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
My father was a detective in New York City for 20 years. He was briefly FBI, so like I had that stuff ingrained within me of right and wrong. And there's stuff I disagree with, obviously, with my parents, as any child does with their
Sure.
parents. But I I just found that from a very young age of like, this is who I am and this is what I believe.
Yeah.
And I've always been so uncompromising in that, in the ways that are good. Like I do think there's a bad side to being uncompromising, but it's something that's so lost in our culture as a whole, of just being so uncompromising in your morals and not just falling to whatever's popular at the moment. And that goes with work as well, and marketing.
Mhm.
And so for my values for this business, I'm like, look, I'm, not that I never compromise, not that I never, fall short in any way, but yeah, that is really to my core who I am.
Yeah, I think your North Star is so clear. And I love what you're saying. I think the opposite side of that argument is the fear of like
Yeah.
when you don't have that clarity. I think that what you're talking about becomes so terrifying,
Yeah.
which is why you get stuck, because of the risk side
Yeah.
of it. Have you always been a risk taker? And like, are you entrepreneurial? You seem like a very entrepreneurial spirit, because you just said, "F it, we're going for it. Let's see what happens."
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I was forced to start this journey. I was talking with someone last week, and he was saying like, there's always that jump moment when it comes to entrepreneurship, and for him and myself, there was no jump. We were pushed.
Ooh.
Like I was going to jump. You know, we had planned of not even jumping, but just like kind of stepping down from the cliff and like, going down
One
the edge.
rung
Like,
at
all
a
right, well,
time.
yeah, we're gonna take one little step at a time, and I won't look down too much. But initially the plan was that uh, we were going to start the company, and it would just be on the side, and we'd save up enough money in the company so we can sustain 3 to 6 months of expenses.
Sure.
So that's like the full wisdom kind of route that most people always like, and that's something I always do try to live by wisdom. What's the wisest thing to do? But sometimes wisdom is not the right thing to do.
Ooh.
And and I would say the book of Job is a perfect example of that in the Bible, where his friends were so wise. They were accusing him of all these things because, like, well, if you are suffering, that means you must have done something wrong. But, actually, Job's like, I did nothing wrong. And so I think sometimes being so dogmatic about the wisdom component can get in our way, because we'll never do anything that's risky. We're only going to always look for if there's a extremely clear path in front of us. And so just because my North Star is pretty clear, that doesn't mean that the path forward is clear. The way I see it is I'm always looking for the signs and the patterns of things happening. And I'm like, all right, what do I see going in front of me? Like I think if you think about it in the way of like, your eyes crouched down, and I'm really trying to listen to my surroundings, like imagining I don't have any sight whatsoever. I'm like, all right, let me just listen, and I can hear some grass blowing in the wind. I can see, I can hear some dogs barking. Like I'm like, all right, what is my next step? What are the things that are about to come and come into my life? And so I do that with every single thing that happens to me. I'm like, what is the purpose in this? what can this lead to? And I do that so frequently, and then it turns out to be correct, you know. And part of it is trying to be as purpose filled as possible and saying that, right, everything in my life has a purpose, more or less, not like, oh no, a bug hit my windshield, that must have a reason for it. No, but like I'm like, everything must have a purpose in my life. So that kind of helps inform me the path forward in almost everything. And in that way, I think my path becomes clear, not because it literally is clear and I know exactly the next steps to take, but because almost like each step in front of me unveils itself. And then I can take that step because I've already been looking for the signs of where to go.
Yeah, it's almost along the lines of that positive mentality, right? Opens up the doors that you're not even prepared for if you're not in that headspace, because they just pass you by and then they're gone forever, right? No, I love that, because I talk quite a bit to, maybe when people talk to me about leadership and wanting to step into it, and usually my go-to is, if you wait till you're ready, you'll never be ready. So you just need to take the leap. It's terrifying, but sometimes that's the answer. Yeah, that's really good. Well, you just crushed that answer. In today's digital age, how crucial is visual storytelling for businesses, and what elements make a visual narrative truly compelling?
Well, I would say that if you're not telling stories, you're not living. Like if your business is not telling stories, you're not going to stand out. No one will know you exist. I think years ago when internet was just popping up, and you hear of the glory days when it was so easy to sell a product. All you need to do is show people. If you just get it right in front of them, they'll buy it. And so it was almost like you can print money that way. But now everyone is on the internet. Everyone is trying the same tactics everyone else is. And I think the best way to get your product to sell it is by resonating with people. And the way we resonate with people is by telling stories. And it's so abundantly clear. And not just even for products, but I think even for gaining any kind of attraction on social media. Like I've even noticed this for my own posts on LinkedIn. The things that always do the best are when I'm telling a story. Having a good hook and then just dragging them through the story. And I think that you have to tell stories, and it's not enough just to tell people about your product. So, and what was the second part of your question there?
No, that's fine. How do you enhance the engagement and conversion with that?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of comes down to the approach that we take at Stump and Root, where we start with story. We start with the why behind your business. We start with who are you? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your product? What's the story behind your product itself or your service? And then we say who you're actually selling to. And then we try to find the stories there so we can actually sell directly to those people. I think, I could talk about hours about this stuff too, about story brand. And I think a lot of people, they see the value of story brand, but they do not know how to implement it. And so it'll more or less be a glorified, billboard in their office or a bumper sticker on the car. And they like the idea of being able to use story brand, but they don't have the wisdom or the discernment to use it well. And so it'll more or less be like an activity they did once or twice, but it won't serve any purpose or in their business because they didn't implement it. And I think that stories have to be implemented into your company. Your company culture has to be in such a way that you're inspiring people to tell stories about your company and your offerings and your business. And that's not something that's very common. I think if you think about the most successful brands, they have the clearest and best stories. And that's why you see a lot of higher end products, companies that you don't even need to know, like they don't need to show their name throughout the entire commercial except for at the very end, and then it kind of pulls it together. And like Nike, or any of those companies, they'll tell their own little narratives, and then at the very end it'll be just do it. And I think that that's a little bit different. Most companies are not at that place because they don't have the recognition, the recognizability of those brands. But the story, the lesson is still the same: is that the best ways to sell to your clients and to your customers is to understand them and tell stories that resonate with them, answer their objections and fears, and overcome their objections.
Can shitty companies still tell stories?
Yeah, but I think they, of course, they could, and we see that all the time. These massive organizations that put millions of dollars behind ads and marketing campaigns, and they can even tell a good one because they might hire some of the best talent. And but I think for, I would say, the smaller companies, a lot of that stuff, it just is, they start to fail. Like I think if you think of some of the companies, like there's so many companies that have gone under because they're not telling the right stories anymore. I think Walmart is a great example of a company that has gone so down from what it used to be in its heyday. Like the founder of that company, he really cared. He really
Yeah.
cared about communities. He cared about having low prices and having jobs for people that paid well and had good health insurance. But since his death, it went under. So it went so far from what the why of the business was, that it impacted everything. And no matter what they did, no matter how much they greenwashed the company and had all these things to make them seem better, people could see right through that. And especially in our age and where we are in marketing, like people know, for the most part, they can see right through all the BS that companies are spewing. And, you know, it's very visceral if you think about it. But like, and so that's why I think the best companies, the companies that rise to the top and stay there, they're the companies that are the most heartfelt and tell the best stories. And they're it's like they're not trying to sell to you. They're trying to help you realize that their product is the answer to your problem. That they're the solution for you. And there are companies that do that well. And I think that for companies to be successful, I think you just really have to get to the heart of your business. Because if all you care about is money in your business, because let's be real, every business is about making money. Like,
Yeah.
duh. Like, I'm not doing this out of the kindness of my heart, and because then I wouldn't be charging anything if it was just for that.
Correct.
You know, like
It's a hobby
I'm.
then.
Yeah, it's a hobby. That art. That's what it'd be, art. So, to go full circle, I but I'm not doing that because I want to provide for my family. And I think, a lot of companies, they eventually get to the place where they want to do bigger and better things in the world because they're not satisfied with just doing the business anymore.
Mm.
And I think all of us have that deep desire to do more for the world, for the most part. And that's something that I think the more companies that do that, the better they will be. Like I know several companies that they do this kind of thing. One company that my wife worked at years ago, uh, they do like bulk memory cards, and they're a local company in Lancaster, and they are a small family-owned company, but they give so much to their community. They give so much to their organizations and to their employees, and they truly live that inside-out approach for organizations. That if you want to do well in life, you have to take care of the people around you, and naturally that will kind of emanate and attract people to you. And another company that one of our clients, Fisher's Becker Structures, they do this also. They work with a local organization, I believe, called Shikamani, and they are about building these structures in Africa. I'm not sure which nation it is, but and then so the founder of the company, the owner of the company, he'll go out himself and build these structures out there, and they put proceeds towards it, and it's incredible. And I'm like, they're living the mission of providing um, this sanctuary for people. When you think about gazebos and pergolas and stuff, they are all about providing this lasting memory for you and your home. Like having a specific place to create these memories and have intention behind it. And they believe that with every fiber of their being, because not only are they selling it to you, but they're also doing it and giving it to other people in need. And I think that's really how you stand out, and you just got to be genuine with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, but we also hear a lot of excuses of why. So, can you give myself like simple step-by-step process of how you work with a customer that you're taking on to get them to the point where they're producing or you're helping them produce content that at SWF, Lexi and I, we call them scroll stoppers. I want to put content out there that stops the scrolling. So we need to look different. We need to hit in a punchy way. And what is our why of why we're telling the story, right? So how, if I'm listening to this and going, this all sounds amazing. I know, I hear this from everybody. How do I do this? What's your process for that?
Yeah, I mean, so we start with story brand. What we'll do is we'll talk with the client for at least a couple hours, really get to know who they are and what they do and why they do it. I think it's important to really draw that out, and sometimes they don't really realize it themselves. It's so you have to kind of get them to that place. I'm like, well, why are you doing this? This, you could be doing anything. And sometimes it's like, well, it's a family business. I just inherited it. But I'm like, all right, but let's get deeper then. Let's figure out what your why truly is, because if you can find that why, then you can incorporate that into everything. And so we'll do that story brand, and then what we'll do is we'll create copywriting, and describe everything from that perspective of that client, the customer, in a way that we're clearly showing their objections being answered. And I think, like, I remember the last company we had worked at, me and Sarah together, it was a landscape edging company, and it's a faux stone landscape edging. And I'm like, look, if we can figure out how to sell rocks, we can sell anything. You're fake rocks, not even real rocks. I'm like, if we can sell fake rocks, we can sell anything. And so, we found the why. We found what it is that really was able to relate to customers, and there was plenty of hate from people like, oh, these are fake, these are bad for the environment. But I'm like, right, it's not for you. Like, this is for people who cannot do this themselves, who maybe could afford big stones, but they can't put it themselves, but they want to feel like they're still doing it themselves. And so that's really who we spoke to when we created those videos. And our very first video at that company went viral on TikTok and on Instagram simultaneously.
Jeez.
There's no boosting, no paid anything. It was just full organic, 6 million each.
Crush
and
it.
Yeah, and it was crazy. We were just like, wow, I guess we did it right. And like, who knew? And they're still using that to this day, almost 2 years later. And that's the thing that, the key to that is, like, you just have to make content that relates to your customers. There's no other way of saying it. If you're not speaking to them, it's just going to be noise. It's not about, like, I think even the trend that with creative media, is that we're going away from that hyper flashy, like, almost like this,
Mr. Beast.
Yeah, everyone's going away from that. People have kind of gotten sick of that style, and they just want to be. They'll sit down, they'll watch a 5-minute video on TikTok. Like, I've done it myself. I'll just hold down my thumb on the right corner, and it'll go 2 times speed. But, like, if I'm getting something of value, I will stop and watch it. And if it's something that resonates with me, if it's a product that resonates with me, and I have a hook, I have a text hook, and I have all these things that you should be doing for every video going, sooner or later, you're going to have a good set of videos, and the other part of that is just experimentation and really trying to find what resonates with your audience. But
I think you said something very profound that I think people struggle with, and that's, you don't have to get everyone in your net. You have to get the right people in your net, right? The niche down, the target audience, you name all of the things, however you want to brand it, but you're going to solve a specific set of people. It doesn't have to be the world.
Yeah. If you sell to everyone, you're selling to no one. And I think that's the problem with a lot of business owners, is they think that they're selling to everyone. But I'm like, you're not selling to everyone. Are you selling to someone in Uganda? No. Okay, so we have demographics there. All right, we have America, or at least the North America. I'm like, all right, great. Now let's keep whittling this down, and you'll get to a very, you just get down to that cone, just like, what's at the bottom of this funnel.
Yes.
And that's who you want to sell to. and you'll realize like, oh, actually, sometimes you might even go down too far. And that at that last company, they was like, okay, our target audience is really only elderly people from 60 to 70 something. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think you have a couple different audiences here. I think there are the elderly, obviously, because they do have those physical limitations. But I think you also have some younger moms who just want to do it themselves and don't want to have to ask their
DIYers.
husbands to lift.
Yep.
Yeah, it's DIYers. That's a whole separate sub niche and subcategory. And
Yeah.
even within DIYers, you have a different set of groupings of people. So I think that the best marketers ask the best questions, and you get the deepest results when you're asking those right questions. And when you have that information, then you can actually sell to the right people, and thus you'll be much more successful at what you're doing.
Yeah, you almost do like a 5 whys. You just keep going why until you keep getting farther down that cone. Yeah, it's really good.
Yep.
That I don't think I've realized in the past until recently how effective the 5 whys is on so many different aspects. Like we use it for safety. Like we have an incident or we have a near miss. Like we just keep going to find out and then what we have to go solve or change to make sure it doesn't happen again. But like you said, it could be with your target audience who you're selling to, like leadership. I mean, it could be almost anything. It's crazy. It's wild. It's such a fascinating. It's really hard to do when you do it right. I think people.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's harder than I ever would have imagined when you start going down, because you get to like the 3rd or 4th why and you're like, you think you're there, but
it's like, nope, keep digging. You'll find more.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. So I want to talk a little about personal branding. You talked about LinkedIn quite a bit. I love LinkedIn so much. I think it's still the Wild West of social media that people are not taking advantage of.
It's crazy. It's so underrated.
I totally agree. It's where all the money is.
Yep.
Everybody.
That's where all of our clients are come from. Yep.
They all have jobs.
Believe it or not, that's where money is.
And the other reason I love it, and I don't think it gets enough credit for this, it's the only social media platform that actually has accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What do? You click on someone's and you see where they work. It's the first thing you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, definitely, because I think people weaponize that. You know, it's like it's kind of like Yellow Pages, but for jobs. You know, you can see who they are, where they're at, and I think with great power comes great responsibility, but with great knowledge comes great responsibility too. And you know, in our culture, people weaponize knowledge. You know, they weaponize access to people, and I think that's the danger of it. But there's definitely is that incentive where it's like, all right, well, I can't post my spicy hot take politically on here, but I can definitely do a spicy hot take on AI, even though sometimes it is still too spicy. Because
turn that heat down, Tim. Turn that heat down.
I know. And then I get like 2 likes. I'm like, oh well, I guess I ruffle some feathers. But
I love it. Hey, once again, back to the target audience. It should never be everybody, right? Because then you're probably not doing it right. So personal branding, how can entrepreneurs and business owners utilize design and photography to build and reinforce their personal brands? Really, and beyond that, just personal branding in general. What's your philosophy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably true for most things, but you just have to be active on it. You know, like I'm surprised by how many business owners are not using or posting publicly on their LinkedIn. Most people are just like silent stalkers, you know, they'll just, and I remember when I, you know, lost my job a year ago as we were starting Something Root, I had so many people reach out and, you know, message me and offer support, but I had never seen them comment or like on anything. Ooh. Like they said, oh, I've always enjoyed and loved your work. I'm like, oh, really? That's surprising, you know, because I would have never known that you were looking at my stuff. But, you know, like I think you don't know the impact that you'll have by posting or the connections you'll truly make, you know, and I think that only happens when you're actively using it. And for business owners, I think at the very least, like every business owner, they have years and years of wisdom and experience that they can share with other people. I made a post recently about talking with my younger self. And so I have this like image of my current self consoling my like 16 or 17-year-old self. And I, you know, wrote this little narrative of like, what would I even say to my younger self? Like, is there something I would have him not do? Or But I'm like, you know what? I would just encourage him to be steadfast and keep going, and that, people's words don't have any power over you, and that you aren't the things that people claim about you, and so on and so forth. And at the very end, I'm like, but the truth is, you do have those younger yous around you. On LinkedIn, there are plenty. I mean, and outside of LinkedIn, obviously, too, but on LinkedIn, there are plenty of younger youths with lesser experience who are not so sure of themselves, who don't have the next steps of their career laid out before them, and they need wisdom and guidance. And I think it's almost our responsibility for those who have that experience to guide the people who are in those younger, stages of life. And I think that's kind of where we should look at it, where of course you can get business. That's what all of our clients have come from LinkedIn, for me doing years and years of it. And it's been a massively important tool for me to get business and make connections and real connections with people. But also, I know there are younger people, younger creatives or freelancers who don't know how to approach this. And I'm like, look, I'm here. I had a conversation with someone who's still in college, and he wanted my advice on how to approach this. And I was like, hey, look, I'm an open book. Let me know when you want to call me, and we can talk, and I can give you as much as I can. And I think for business owners, like, they at the very least need to start uh, just sharing the wisdom. I think part of it come down to just talking head videos where they're talking in a podcast. Maybe they can start their own business owners podcast, or also just sharing images from their business along with lessons, highlighting some of the people that they really value, books that they're reading, emphasizing important values that they hold, sharing some one of their employees that they really their employees have exemplified their brand values and pillars. Like, there are a million ways to get started, and I think, again, like I said before, like, we put these barriers in front of us of like, oh, I don't know what to post. I'm like, I promise you, there's an unlimited amount of things you can post. We just get in our own way. We just like, oh, well, that's dumb. People don't want to listen to me. I was talking with someone like a few weeks ago, and I'm like, hey, dude, you got to show off your work. You design websites. Get out there and go on LinkedIn. He's like, oh, I don't want to be some influencer, and I don't want people to think a certain way about me, or I don't want to pretend I'm something I'm not, and I don't think I have anything of value to share. I'm like, that is crazy. I'm like, you are living a different experience than anyone else has lived. You have unique experiences that can really be of value to people who are 5 steps behind you, or even 1 step behind you, who just need the next step to take. And I think if we look behind us and offer our hand to people, I think that it'll make us better people. I think we'll, find value again in what we're doing. It's like, you know what, this is why I'm doing it. And and I think that's where you can find value. If you don't find it in the actual work you're doing, let's say you're selling, like vacuums or something, where it's like, all right, well, this is not a particularly sexy item, or but if you can say, look, even though I sell vacuums, I can tell and talk to other business owners of my experience, and maybe they're in a hard time. Maybe their business is struggling and they don't know the way forward, but I might have the key to their problems. And you'll never know if you don't actually start sharing.
If you can sell vacuums, I want to know how you do it, because you're a person must be gangster. So let's bust 3 myths about personal branding, and probably the ones we hear. 1, I never have anything to say. Everything is content.
Yep.
What I usually tell people is, if you ever go, how do they not know that? Content, give it away. Free. Yep. Right? Anytime you have a little mini eureka moment, it doesn't even have to be a huge eureka moment, or you're just in a meeting and someone says, oh, I didn't know that. There's a million other people who don't either. Give it away.
Yep.
So anytime you feel that you have something that other people may not understand or do, give it away for free. It is the easiest solution. Once you change your mindset that literally anything is postable, you will look around in that abundance mentality and go, oh my God, I have so much to talk about.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like the mentality of like, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Like, but do that in a good way, where every idea that you can say, that it's like, there's so much, I have like a a note like on my Apple Notes on my phone, and I just write down ideas. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
what if I talk about this? Oh, I like this quote from someone else. Maybe I can put my own twist on it. Or, oh, I liked how they did this. I have my own version that I'd really like to flesh out. And I just have a list of dozens of ideas, so I
Yes.
don't run out of ideas.
Yeah. You brain dump. And the way Jonathan Core told me about it, he said, I brain dump at the end of every week. Everything that annoyed me, that was great, that was a problem, you just brain dump, because all of that in a future state of yourself can be turned into something valuable.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Everything is content. Number two, I don't have enough time. That's bullshit. You can, so a couple tricks here. LinkedIn allows you to schedule out to 3 months ahead of time. So schedule every post, because in the moment, if you always do it day by day, something will happen. Like you said, your barriers, and you will not do it. Consistency is king in this world.
Yep, definitely.
And if you say you don't have enough time, do you want more customers and do you want more employees? If that
well, the truth is, like, we only put time for things that we value.
Yeah.
And because I've had this exact conversation with people. I'm like, get on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, I don't have time. I'm like, but do you have time to brush your teeth? Do you have time to eat? Do you have time to do the thing? I'm like, you make time for the things that you hold value in. And so if you know that the only option for gaining customers or clients or whatever is through posting LinkedIn, you will. And that's what I do. I set time aside every day for LinkedIn because I know it's so valuable to me.
Yes.
And so
that's so well said. The last thing I will say is, you will not be everybody's cup of tea. That's the game.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Yep.
You're not supposed to be.
Yeah, you got to be unashamedly yourself.
Yes, and even like you said, even if you see something, you're like, damn, that was a great post, and you turn that into your own thing, just because it was said before. I also hear this all the time. Just because it was said before, your voice is a different twist that someone else is going to resonate. They may not resonate with the OG post of it, right? Yeah. It's just like YouTube videos. I went through this when I started it. It was like, well, why would I make a video about St. Kitts Marriott? It's been done 100 other times, because my voice is unique. And a group of people are going to go, I really like that take on it. And I've had that. I've had people comment that I've watched 100 videos on this resort. You're the first one I feel like I really connected with. But guess what? There could have been 100 other people who didn't, but that's okay. I found a person who did. So like, your voice is unique, and it will vibe with someone specifically.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like pride, where it's like, oh, well, it's not an original idea, and I want to only post my original ideas, and I'm like, well, that's so arrogant to think, like, we don't have original thoughts, believe it or not. Everything is a combination and a mixture, and like, of everything that's come before us. Yeah. We're all being influenced. Yeah, we're all like, what's the word for that with music, where they use previous parts of other music and incorporated it.
I know what you're saying.
It's that's what we're doing for everything. We're using older parts and we're combining new ideas or older ideas. Like Solomon says, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new. And so there's nothing new that you can post. But what you can post that is unique is your own experience, because it's like you only have the amount of combinations that you do. And just because someone else has said it doesn't mean that they can't relate to it. Yes. That's actually, it's the opposite. It's like, all right, well, someone else has said it. I'm like, all right, but if you say it, you could have someone who needs to hear it, and so I think one of the fears that we have is that and that's just one of the barriers we just put up, like it's I need to sound original. I don't want to sound like someone else. I'm too afraid of this, or I need to feel like I'm writing something completely original, not influenced by anyone else. But it's a lie that we tell ourselves. Like, it's the lie that we think that we're better than we actually are, or more important than we actually are. And I think if we just humbly say, look, I just want to share the stories, and I hope that those resonate with people, then I think that's, the way to go.
Love that. And then maybe the fourth fear is like, I don't want the backlash, right? And I think to get over that is, if you wouldn't call those people in an emergency to ask them for advice, don't worry about their criticism. Just move on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things that, because I didn't grow up super confident, but maybe at some point in my early 20s, I'm like, you know what? Who cares? Like, I remember the moment it happened. I, because I'm a pretty silly, goofy guy sometimes, and I love singing. So I was walking in Lancaster City with my friend, and I was just kind of like humming to myself. And then I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to sing a little bit louder because I want to enjoy life, and I do not care what other people think about me singing in a whatever kind of way. And so now I don't care. Like, I think obviously be respectful of people, so that don't don't mishear me. But I'm like, you know what? These people, I will never see them again. And even if they did, I don't hold them in any way of value that I think their opinion is important. I think we have to be so self-assured, not arrogant or self-obsessed or anything like that, but just know who we are and know that, look, if they interpret it some kind of way, that's on them. I will always make sure to tell people how I am and how I feel, but I'm not going to let all those things stand in the way of living my life, because so many people, they're afraid of quitting jobs or getting new jobs because they're afraid of what the people will think. I'm like, who cares? You're not living life for them. You're living life for you, and the ones that you hold dear. So stop living for everyone else as if everyone's opinion is dictating what you do. So,
Are you passionate about that, Tim? I can't really tell.
no, believe it or not, I'm not. This is not something I really care that much about.
No, I love it because your energy brought you up during that, right? Because it's something you lived, and it's so personal for you that you like want to shout from the rooftops, like, just go for it, send it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you stay consistent with your own stuff?
Consistent with my own personal stuff. I think kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, I find the value in it, so I have to stay consistent. I know how important it is to do this, because if I don't get new business, my daughter doesn't eat, my wife doesn't eat, I don't have an apartment. Like, I have all these things that it rides upon. It and I think, we have to really remind ourselves, like, what are we doing this for? Like, what's the why, kind of behind what we're doing? The why behind me being present, I say there's several. The most important why for me is for my family, for my wife and my daughter and my soon to be born son. Like, they're the reason I do everything in my life, and there's no one that comes close to that. Next to that would be, I love helping other people. If I can help someone else through wisdom or shared experiences or relating or whatever, I'm going to do that. And so those whys really inform even my content strategy. Like, who am I talking to? How am I talking to people? And truthfully, I find myself kind of vacillating slightly, because I'm like, how do I want to post? Do I want to post for people who are freelancers, or people who are stuck in jobs who want to become their own, uh, business owners or whatever? Or do I talk to business owners who are my, the way I got money through my business? So like, I kind of find myself like struggling. I'm like, I don't know who. And maybe it's not one or the other. I think I just need
maybe it's all, right? And you
it's
you
all,
roll through those voices.
Yeah. And so that's I stay consistent because I have to, because I find value in it, and also I enjoy it. I it's like a way for me to kind of flex sometimes my just creative writing, because I'm not a writer. I've never been a writer, but I've done a heck of a lot of writing because of LinkedIn. And like, I always found the easiest way or the quickest way to get stuff done back in, middle school and high school. But now, actually, I really enjoy doing this. I've even taken time to do some little creative writing pieces on LinkedIn as well. And, I think, I just, it's become part of just what I do. It's not, it's just one of the things I do. Just like, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast, like it becomes part of your day. And I think for people who want to be successful, who want to grow their businesses, you just have to incorporate it into being part of your day, and not something that's optional. Because I think if you view it as optional, if you view it as something that you can just, like, not do, the first chance you get, you'll blow it off. And I think that's true for most things about habits, and you know, and even kind of getting to habits about creating a habit for this stuff, being consistent. One of my favorite books is Atomic Habits.
We're reading it
Very
in our
popular
book club right now at work.
Okay, perfect. It's amazing.
It's
I read
amazing.
it. It's multiple times I've read it. And the biggest benefit that book had given me was the words. It gave me these word tools that I can use. And because now I know how to approach these things. I know how to talk about these things. I know, like, if I want to do something and I'm really struggling to do it, let me pair it with something I want to do.
Stacking.
So if habit stacking, yeah, there it is. It's like, and there's several tools like that within the book that if you struggle with LinkedIn, if you're like, all right, I'm really struggling with the motivation to get it done. All right, what's something that you can add that you want to do to what you need to do with LinkedIn? And so I think there are ways of doing that. Maybe you want to hang out with your friends more or with your business colleagues more. So all right, once a week we're all getting together, or you could have a phone call or whatever it is, and you can say we're all posting on LinkedIn, so let's have an accountability group. And I think that's you just have to make a habit out of it and be intentional, and I think that all those barriers kind of fall away and the excuses fall away.
So anybody who's still skeptical, what is one thing since you're consistent on LinkedIn that has surprised you about your consistency and really personal branding in general? But outside of the customers you've gotten.
Yeah, I mean, just the amount of people that actually watch or listen or read. That's the biggest surprise to me. Like I said before, like when I was let go and I asked for help, I had people commenting support. I was like, whoa, I never saw you before, like, and I think that sometimes it's almost embarrassing. Like we're like, oh man, you were reading that. It's this like vulnerable feeling you get because there are more people looking and watching than you realize, but it can be the best thing that more people are caring about what you're listening or you're saying. They found value in what you're saying, even if they don't interact with it. And it's annoying. I wish more people would actually interact with it if they're reading it. But
in
truth,
free.
like, yeah, believe it or not, it's not pay to click like yet, not yet. It's not some. Yeah, so yeah, I can go on with that, but like,
yeah, the connections are unbelievable.
Yeah, the connections have been awesome, and just meeting so many friends, like now friends that I've made through LinkedIn, like it's truly invaluable. And even people who are not local to me, people who are in Milwaukee or people who are in Florida or wherever, and those have been the surprises. Like it's expected because, of course, that's what social media is all about, making these connections. But in the way that it's like, oh wow, they were looking at it and I was able to impact these people, so.
I'm 100% with you. I think there is a giant world of awesome people out there. And until you start throwing that stone into the pond and creating those ripples, you may never get to meet some of those people. And I have met some incredible, just through podcasting. Like that's the biggest surprise for me. And some of these people we're working with because it's been such a life-changing experience to get to talk to them for an hour, because you really get to know people when you talk to them for an hour. And it's like, these people crush life. I want to be around. I want to be a part of that. Right. And it's just, and we're talking from all over the world. And it's just like, there's so many awesome people out there. If you just start, putting that branch out there and see who grabs onto it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Any emerging trends you see coming, either in the collaborative or the creative space or social media or anything that you think people should know about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. One is called EGC. It's been like the kind of the hot button topic for the past few months, but EGC is just employee generated content. A lot more companies have been putting that into work where, kind of building on what I said before about culture, your culture and your brand. Like when you have employees that actually value your company and they want to show off the amazing culture that you actually have, I think it resonates more deeply than with some influencer. I think people are kind of sick and tired of influencers. Like they want to get they want real, authentic like experiences and connections with people. And a way to do that is, ironically, with using people within your own company to sell your product. And and just show people like, hey, look, we're human beings, we're selling this stuff and we make a living through this, and so support us and you can support these families. And I think that's one of the biggest movements within marketing is kind of getting away from influencers and going back to just individuals.
Yeah.
Nothing's overly flashy or overly gaudy or anything like that, but just going back to the everyday person. I'd say that's definitely one, and then another one would be FaceTime content. Just people like they want almost like I think humanity is the most alone, at least in America, that it's ever been. We are so obsessed with social media, but we're so we're so far away from everyone else around us, even though we're texting them and FaceTiming and everything like that. And that's why I think a lot of people, they'll even put, I'm guilty of this in the past myself when I was, living by myself and single, but I would just put on a TV show just for background noise, just so I can feel like there's people around me, and it's like sad, but that's the reality for a lot of people. They want to feel connection. And it's not that we want to manipulate or anything like that or take advantage of people, but I think that you want to meet people where they're at in your marketing. And I think people, if you're genuinely solving a problem for them, there's no problem in advertising your products. Like I said before about the landscape etching, I'm like, that's a real solution to someone. Is it overpriced? Yeah, you betcha. But it's solving a problem for these people, and they are so grateful. I remember going to doing a testimonial for that with that client, one of the customers that had bought that stuff, and she was like over the moon, and just like, you gave me the ability to garden again.
Aww.
And it's like, it's touching, and I'm like, that's why I love doing, because I love making deeper connections with people. I'm like, wow, it's really impacted them. And so kind of going back to this FaceTime content is like making content that reaches people and meets them where they're at, and allows them to feel less alone in the world. And I would say that almost like, if FaceTime content, for people who don't really know what that is, like, when you're FaceTiming with your family, like sometimes you're just like, you're not really looking at the camera, you're kind of looking around, and you're kind of just showing random stuff. And I think you can boil it down even deeper, it's making content that feels just so approachable. Like, you're not obsessed with shots and everything. But also, I don't want to say that that's not important, because there are companies that are killing it and creators that are killing it with their hyper like cinematic stuff, or so there are plenty of them that do really well and are successful. So it's not like you have to be only that. Like, you can find your own unique style, and that kind of come back to the art part of it, where if being an artist and you're communicating with other people who are storytellers and artists, I'm like, of course they're going to gravitate, like myself, I gravitate towards higher quality content. But then there are people who are like moms who are, or empty nesters. Like, they don't really care about the flashy stuff. They just want something that speaks directly to them. They don't want any super crazy hooks. They don't want, these anything. They just want to be told what they need to do and how they can get it done. So.
Yeah, I love that. So last question for you. One, before I do that, where can everybody find you, Tim? This was fascinating. I didn't know we were going to go this deep on some of the other stuff, and I love that. I'm with you. I could talk about some of this stuff literally all day long. We're a dangerous combo right now.
Oh man, I love talking too. So you gotta get me to shut up.
So where one, I'm sure everybody, there's a lot of resonation here with things that that you said. So where can everybody go to find you or Stump and Root?
Yeah, so I am mostly on LinkedIn. I mean, I have platforms everywhere, but LinkedIn is where you can interact with me and see me every day, pretty much. So LinkedIn, Timothy Medina, and I, co-founded Stump and Root with my sister-in-law Sarah, which is a whole different story. But that we're also on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, Stump and Root Co. And our website is stumpandroot.co, and you can find everything about us there.
Awesome. So last question. 3, do not do cringeworthy things you see around marketing that you wish people wouldn't do.
Man, I was just talking about this with Sarah today too. I feel like I see it every day where I'm like, oh, guys. I think any kind of content that is not for the customer or is not value based. Like if I had like one suggestion for anyone to be any kind of successful on in social media in general, is just make content that your customers find valuable. But I see so many people doing the opposite. Like, I use this example all the time, but we were doing some work for this landscaping company, and I'm not kidding. Every single one of their posts was either a holiday post like Merry Christmas, Happy 4th of July, or whatever, or it was a huge photo of a tick or like I'm like, I don't want to see a bug on my screen. Like, get out of here. But so I would say stop posting gross stuff like that, because no one's to follow you if you're posting that stuff. No one's going to resonate with you by seeing a giant ant or bug on your screen. So that's definitely one of the don'ts. Don't do that. Don't post things like that. And some of the things that make me the cringe the most is just like such low effort content where they're just using templates, like motion templates. It makes me crazy because I'm sure what they're doing is they're outsourcing it to an agency or quote unquote agency that they really don't know what they're doing. It's like, oh well, they just want to see posts on their social media, so let's just post, some, Envato,
checking a box. Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, it's just horrible stuff, and it's just ugly, and it's not on brand, and so those things make me cringe pretty quickly.
One for me is the talking head stuff that is like, super professional, uncomfortable. Like, I'm uncomfortable for you, so you cannot be comfortable. And I'm not even hearing anything that's being said because I'm like, oh my God, I want to help you be more comfortable in front of camera. That's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah. That's one of the hardest things is people feeling comfortable on camera. And
it's practice. It's just a muscle. You gotta keep doing it.
Yeah. And I think the other part of it is having people who make you feel comfortable on camera.
That's good.
That's something that we really try to do in our company, because most people that we're filming, they've never been on camera, and it's not that they're always perfect in the end, because it's like, all right, well, we can get what we can get, but
it's called
getting
editing.
People and trying to CGI their face and all that. Like, it's it's hard to get people to look and sound right, and so like the best way I can do is I can just try to coach them and try to get them to like, all right, look, someone on the other end of this lens, it's like, just imagine they're your family like member or your actual customer who you're trying to communicate with, and like, all right, well, sound a little bit more confident, or let's so I think that's definitely one of the most cringy things is when it's almost like there's someone off camera with a gun and they're like, you better record this video or we're gonna kill your dog, so it's like, just, and I think it comes from the confidence thing. It's like they're not confident and they're insecure, and I think you do it enough times, you'll kind of get over that. But
yeah, we've been doing a lot of our employee videos. So we've been making shorts, just asking them questions, right? That is in our field or in our niche, and we have noticed we've probably done about 10 or 11 of them. And as we're moving down this, right, when we're walking through the shop, Lexi and I, and she's got her camera with the stick, right, and I have my microphone stand that's just like bent out of stainless or aluminum, and it's like, now they know, right? But the way they show up each time we go down this journey is just a little bright, and then they're actually excited, right? Because they've seen it on they've seen it on social media, they've shared it with their friends or family or whatever, and you can see that evolution even in the construction industry. It's the same thing. It's terror, but then when they see the end product and they're a part of that, it changes, and they'll act like they don't want. But when we don't come by, I get
Yeah,
some,
like,
I got
hey.
some, hey, why wasn't I a part of this? Right. So like, but it's
Yeah.
really cool to watch that evolution and be a part of that and watch people be like, yeah, I'll absolutely. And you can see the younger generation just natural with it and they
Oh,
love,
yeah.
they love it so much. So I think it's, once again, you just got to keep flexing that, making people feel as comfortable as possible. And like, I'm an idiot on camera, so it makes them feel, oh, okay, I can just be whoever I want to be
Yeah. It
because
can just be fun. Just make it fun. It doesn't have to be something so serious.
yes, it's
People
not
take themselves
polished.
so seriously.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's so perfect. I love that. And don't be afraid. I literally say all the time, Lexi's like, don't worry. I can edit whatever we don't like. Just you go and take as long as you want. I'll cut the gap and put them together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really fun. I think that authenticity and getting comfortable and being a part of that with your employees, I think makes a huge difference.
Definitely.
Cool. Tim, anything else? Any other wisdom? Lots of wisdom from you today. This was wonderful. Thank you.
I mean, I got an unlimited amount of things I can say, but nothing specific. I mean, I think for business owners who are listening, I think, even something quick. I think people are also afraid of like showing their personal lives.
Oh,
Like,
that's a good one. Yeah.
So many people, they're just like, oh, I can't post my family or personal accomplishments or whatever. But I'm like, because I think the fear is like, oh, well, this is not Facebook, so I can't post this stuff. But believe it or not, people want to be reminded that we're human beings, even on LinkedIn. Believe it or not, and that's why I share my wife and daughter on there occasionally. I'm like, look, this is why I do it. It reminds us and it keeps us all humble. I'm like, you know what? I see people do that all the time, and like I support that always. I think that it because I think like we almost want to do that severance thing. We want to have our work life and our personal life separate, but we can't because it's all deeply intertwined.
Yes.
It's all deeply connected.
Yes.
And we shouldn't pretend that they're not.
Yes.
And so I think with business owners, I'm like, share your personal lives with your employees, with your because we want to relate to each other, and I think that's where so much of our problems are, is that we feel like we can't or we shouldn't. But I think for your companies, for your products, the more you relate to people, the more vulnerable you are. I promise you, the more successful you'll be.
Yeah, and I love that. And just to top that off with an actual example, because since I started this venture in the beginning of 2024 about taking LinkedIn as serious as I can and putting a real game plan behind it and having a strategy, I've had a couple of employees who were new that I usually try to get out to see them within the first 7 days, talk about culture, how we behave, blah, 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 things like that. And I had, I think, 2 different instances where I went up to talk to them about culture and they said, you don't need to. I follow you on LinkedIn. I know exactly what's expected here. And I was like, that's why I do it. That is it.
Got
him exactly, because it's just and the choice to want to be a part of that.
Yeah,
it's different. It's not just an interview at that point in time. It's when you take away the fear of knowing what it looks like behind the door when you walk in, you'll get more applicants because the fear is gone. You know exactly what to expect when you walk in. And sometimes I'd be like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of one of these shorts. That's awesome. So yeah, couldn't agree more with you, man. You are dead right. I didn't take it serious until 2024, and I wish I would have, but you got to start sometime, right? It's brilliant. Dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, this was amazing. Once again, if anyone wants to check him out or check out the company, Stumpinroot Co. Timothy Medina on LinkedIn. He's on there all the time, dropping sweet knowledge bombs and showing some of his personal side. So thank you so much again, Tim, for coming on.
Thank you.
We will catch everybody on the next one.